Hi there, I'm Trisha Morris from Club Scrap and welcome to the Vines Card Kit Workshop. I'm really excited about walking you through the process of making a dozen cards together with this beautiful collection. Let's get started. I've got my Vines card kit handy and I'm going to just go ahead and swipe away all of the envelopes and goodies, keeping them handy of course, and just isolating the paper. Now I also have my favorite trimmer on hand here. This is the Fiskars Guillotine. You can grab these from my website if you need one, and I do highly recommend it for our method. But I'm also using our accordion pocket file so I can keep organized. We'll be making 3 different card styles. So each style will have its own pocket, and then pocket D can be used for like anything that's left over that we might want to incorporate in our design work later on. And then the lip of this accordion pocket file just lives right underneath the base of my trimmer, and the trimmer helps hold it up vertically so that we can have access to everything and we can keep a lot of our other workspace free and clear of all these pieces of paper. Now, if you don't have that accordion pocket file, don't let that stop you from taking this class. Just maintain 4 separate piles, maybe label them A, B, C, and D. Now here's my paper. I'm going to grab this and let's sort the paper into the order that we'll use it. So I'd like to hold the paper vertically like this in my arms so that I can kind of easily see all the colors from the top. And I want you to find one sheet of the wine color. Now there are 2 shades of this like burgundy wine color, wine shade. One is much darker, that's the wine. The other one we're calling rose, so think rosé, okay? Speaking of, let's find one sheet of the rose. Now you're gonna find that one side of this paper has a deeper texture than the other, and at this time it doesn't matter what side is facing up, but I do like to prepare myself. So I'm gonna take this texture side, the less smooth side, and place that face down. So the smooth side's facing up. Hope that made sense. And next up, we're gonna grab a dark green. So just make sure you grab the darker of the 2, followed by one sheet of the light green. This too has a texture. I'll place it texture side down. And then we're gonna find all those colors again in that same order. So the wine, then one sheet of rose, texture down, one sheet of dark green, one sheet of the light green. Next up, find both prints. It gets easier as we make our way through. The prints are placed face down. Then I want you to find the sheet of Cutaparts that has these framed elements on one side and then like squares on the other side. And then finally, this sheet that has the 2 little icons here at the bottom. I'll put that face down. Now take the whole pile, flip it back up so that the wine is back on top, and that's the order that we'll be trimming our paper. My preferred positioning is the instructions on my right if you chose to print them. Otherwise, you might have them on your laptop or tablet or something. And then my trimmer in the middle with my accordion pocket file and my papers to my left. Now I'm going to take the first sheet of this wine color and determine the grain direction. And it's important that we do that because eventually this will be folded into a card base and we want to make sure that we're folding in cooperation with the grain. So to determine that, I just hold the paper by an edge and wiggle it a little bit, study it, see if it's stiff or loose, and then compare it to a neighboring edge. Now that feels quite stiff. It doesn't want to wiggle at all. This very easily, all right? I can wobble this around, push in on it. It doesn't give me a lot of resistance. Once you determine that grain direction, I want you to rotate that paper if you need to, so that when you place it in the trimmer, it bends most easily or wiggles easily from the top of the trimmer to the bottom. Not this way, but this way, okay? Let's repeat that for that beautiful rose paper. Again, 2 edges. This is very flat as a pancake. This is very wiggly. So I'm gonna rotate the paper so it goes into the trimmer, bending easily from top to bottom. Stack those papers nice and neat. And now if you don't want to do 2 sheets at a time, or if you don't have the appropriate trimmer on hand, you'll need to do it 1 at a time and just go back and repeat the process. I'll unlock my blade by removing it from the little notch here in the lower right corner of the unit. And then I'm going to place these in my trimmer nice and neat. My first cut will be at 11 1/4. Now remember that these are centimeters, these are inches, and this trimmer has a column every 1/4 inch, which I love. So 11 1/4, you have to find the 11 way over here and go left 1 column to add that 1/4 inch to it. Then before you slice, make sure you push firmly on this clear stabilizing bar and then give that a slice, and this trimmer performs beautifully. Now, one thing I do find is that if I'm standing up, I have a little bit more success with the trimmer. I like to stand when I'm crafting anyway. I don't know about you. Okay, then after that, we'll move all the way down to a nice whole number here, cut at 7. Stabilize each time to keep those papers from wiggling. Now rotate this 7 by 12 and trim at 11.5. Now that's going to be 2 columns left of the 11. So find 11 first, go left 2 columns, and then slice at 11.5. And then one more slice at 10. Now this right here is the base of two card bases. I'm going to set those aside, not in a pocket, but on the table so it can be scored later. Then we have this little strip here. We're going to make a bunch of squares out of this, so just bear with me on all these cuts. Our first one is at 6. Push even here. Take an index finger and push on the clear bar. Then 4.5. 3 and 1.5. Now you're going to find a series of squares that are all the same size, and then there will be 2 really small pieces left over. So all of the squares will go in pocket C, and these tiny little extras, those are scraps. Then you have a very narrow strip here. It's 7 inches long, and that's perfect to embellish our 5 by 7 cards. I'll place that in pocket C as well. Now pick up the next strip here. This is 4.25 by 12 right now. We're simply going to trim this at 11. You just made 2 more card bases to set aside to be scored later on. And then we have this little piece that fell from the end. We'll place that in pocket A. And now we have this long strip, which we will trim at 10.25. Now, if you want, I like to move it down a little bit so I can see that 10.25 better. So the top of the paper is resting against the line printed beneath the inch markings. And then 6. This longer piece, pocket B. The shorter pieces, pocket A. And then these little scraps go in the, truly scrap pile. Guess what? We get to do all of that one more time. So I'm going to take my dark green paper and find the grain direction so it dips easily top to bottom. And then with this next sheet of light green, to push on it. If you can't really tell by just letting it hang there, give it a push. You'll feel right away that it least resistance. Again, least resistance goes top to bottom. Stack them neatly and trim at 11.25. Stabilize. And then 7. Rotate the 7 by 12 and trim at 11.5 and 10. All right, these are 2 card bases. Set them aside to be scored later, and let's make some more squares out of this strip here. Our first cut is at 6. Then 4.5, 3, and 1.5. All right, square, 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 square. And then we do have this, again, a little scrap there that fell from the end. So dispose of that and put the rest of the full squares in pocket C, along with the little strips that fell from the end, pocket or pile C. Then grab this longer strip here. We'll trim that at 11. And you've just made 2 card bases. Those get set aside. The piece that fell from the end, pocket A. Lastly, we'll trim this little strip, and I will place it right below the inch markings, starting at 10.25 and 6. The 6-inch strip, pocket B, and the other shorter strip, A, and the really little ones, the scrap pile. Those go away. Now we're moving on to a new diagram, but we still have to check our grain direction. So just make sure your paper dips easily top to bottom on the wine. And also grab the rose, or the rosé, and place that dipping easy top to bottom. Stack them neatly together. And we'll trim at 5 3/4. Now rotate this piece and trim at 10.5, 9, 6 3/4, and 3.5. Just a quick pause to tell you, if I'm going too fast for you, go to your gear on the lower right corner of your YouTube channel screen and then just choose playback speed and slow me down. You can bring it down to 0.75. That'll really slow it down. So if you're just starting out on learning this, I don't want you to get frustrated. I'm sure there are many, many people following along with me just fine, just because they've done it enough and practice. Like anything, practice will improve your results. Okay, let's take the piece that's currently sitting in here now and rotate it so it's horizontal and trim at 4 3/4. Place this larger panel in pocket A, and the little piece that fell from the end, pocket D, for decide if you want to use it later. Let's pick up the next pair of panels. We'll trim this at 4.5. Also pocket A, and this other little rectangle that fell, B as in Bravo. Then you have these narrow strips, B as well, B Bravo. And then we have some strips. These are 1.5 inches tall. Let's trim them into some squares. We'll start at 4.5, then 3, and then 1.5. Sorry about all the squares. We're gonna make this really cool quilted card, though. You're gonna love it, so just bear with me. And we'll take those little squares out. Now, from that pile, probably on the bottom of it, you're gonna find 2 pieces that are not square. Those are scraps, and then the other squares, guess what? Pocket C. And we get to do that one more time with the other strip here. So, first cut, 4.5, and 3, and 1.5. You'll gather up just the squares and get rid of the rectangles. All the squares, pocket C. This next piece is going to be scored several times and a little bit of extra treatment to it. I'm going to set that aside to be dealt with later. And guess what? We get to do all that one more time with our dark green paper, making sure the grain dips top to bottom. The light green, this one is so heavy, I just love this paper. It's dipping top to bottom, stacked neatly. And our cut once again is at 5 3/4. Do a rotation and trim at 10.5, 9, 6 3/4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 6 3/4, and 3.5. Rotate that 3.5 inch piece so it's horizontal and trim at 4 3/4. Piece in the base goes in pocket A. The pieces that fell, D, David. Pick up the next pair of rectangles, trim these at 4.5. Pocket A, and the pieces that fell, pocket B. Now we have this narrow strip also for pocket B. Then we have this long strip that needs to be trimmed into squares. So those same 3 numbers, 4.5, 3, 1.5. Find your squares, get rid of the non-squares, and those go with their friends in pocket C, Charlie. Repeater, so 4.5 on the next strip, 3, 1.5. Locate your squares and get rid of your rectangles. Those go bye-bye. Squares in pocket C again. We're left with our giant, what is this, 6 1/4 by 12. We're gonna do a lot with that later. Let's move on for now to the beautiful print. This print will never be folded, so that's why we don't even care about the grain direction in this situation. Let's trim just one of them at 10 3/4, so that's 10 plus 3 columns left, 10 3/4. Then 8.5 and 4 1/4. Let's take these 2 4 1/4 by 12s and we're going to place them back to back, white side facing white side. and trim both at the same time at 6 inches. And then just put the pieces facing the same way again. I like to do it white side to white side because sometimes print on print tends to be a little bit slidey. That's a technical term. I'm gonna put this in pocket B. Bravo. Now we have this narrow strip. We're also gonna trim this one at 6. It's the widest of 2 strips that were left. Both of those go in pocket B as well, B bravo. And now we have this long, narrow strip. Now, it would have been a scrap, but I realized that the size I had was too perfect. We're gonna make a bunch of squares that will nest with the other squares. If you don't wanna do this, these are your cards. But I thought it would be nice to add a little bit of a print to those squares. Our first cut is gonna create a scrap, but it's at 11 1/4. If you want, you can just take that little piece that fell and then get rid of it now, so you don't have to deal with it later. Here we go. Next cut, 10. We're gonna make cuts every 1 1/4 inch. Then 8 3/4, 7 1/2, 6 1/4, 5, 3 3/4, 2 1/2, 1 1/4. And even on this little piece, just use that clear bar to hold the paper. And now we have all of our squares from our beautiful print to add to their friends in pocket C, Charlie. And let's take the remaining print here and trim this one at 11 1/2, 10 1/4, 8, and 4. Gather up the 2 pieces, the 2 4x12s. We're gonna do the back-to-back trick again, and we will cut them at the same time at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. Once again, you can take these 4 panels that are the same and place them all facing each other in pocket A. You do have 2 smaller prints that go in D David. Then you have this 2 1/4 by 12 inch strip. We're gonna trim that in half at 6 inches. Pocket B for both of those. And then finally, guess what? We have another strip here. There's a wider one and a skinnier one. This one, the skinny one, I didn't use it. It can go in D, and you can decide if you want to use it later. And this, we're gonna make some more squares. So once again, that first cut at 11 1/4, pick up the little piece that fell so you don't have to deal with it now, and pop that in your scrap pile, okay? And then here we go. We're gonna go at every 1 1/4. So next up is 10, 8 3/4, 7 1/2, 6 1/4, 5, 3 3/4, 2 1/2, 1 1/4. And you're like, ugh, I don't even know what you're doing, Trisha. I'm just gonna do what you say. That's fine. You don't have to understand it, just follow along. And lo and behold, you have a whole series of printed squares to join their friends in pocket C. Here we are at the Cutaparts. I want to remind you, now if you know what you're doing, just go ahead and get started. For those who are new, there's a little instructions on the outside of the sheet. It says remove paper outside of corner cutting guides. Those are the guides. And when I make this first cut, it is really hard to see the edge of the blade because the paper size is so large. So when I make my first cut, I tend to just go shy of the line. Then I do a rotation because I have to do this on all 4 edges. When I bring this paper up to the edge, I can look for the edge of the stainless steel blade there, and I look at the bottom as well, and I just tweak it until I have it lined up. And if I need to go back and clean that up later, I can. Now when I rotate once more, I can see really well where that blade meets the guide. Rotate again, line up my marks, get sets, and slice. Now I feel really good about the 2 cuts on this edge, so when I rotate, I'm gonna look at my 12, and it just takes a nice shaving off, and I'm gonna do one more cleanup over on this edge too. And I just took off little shavings basically, and all these pieces can be, look at this shaving. That's amazing that this trimmer is capable of being that precise. Threw those away, and I want to begin with the piece situated like this, where I have 4 rectangles with frames around them in the lower left corner. And it should say thinking of you right here. And our cut will be at 9 and 4 3/4. Now rotate this piece so it's horizontal, and then You Are Not Getting Older should be on the right. I'm going to challenge you just slightly. Because of that quilted card, it creates kind of an odd measurement that we must learn, because if we don't do it at that measurement, it's not going to look quite right. So I'm here to help you find these weird measurements. Our first cut on this one is at 10 1/8, which is halfway between 10 and 10 1/4. There's that medium size hash mark there. That's 10 1/8. Also visually, you'll be able to see that you're correct, because you can just cut right through those 2 pieces of artwork. Our next cut will be on the nearest 1/4 inch at 8 1/4. That's easy. Then moving on to 6 3/8, which is halfway between 6 1/4 and 6 1/2. That medium size hash mark there is 6 3/8. Then 4 1/2 and 2 1/4. The 2 happy birthdays are going to go in pocket B, Bravo. Then you have the 4 fun sentiments, C, Charlie. Pick up the next strip so it reads right side up. We will cut at 10 1/4, 8 1/2, 6 3/4, 5, 2 1/2. The first 2 sentiments, congratulations and happy birthday, go in pocket B, Bravo. And the last 4 sentiments that are all the same size, pocket A, Alpha. The next strip, nice and easy, all whole numbers, will go 9, 6, and 3. Gather and place all of them in pocket A. Pick up your next sheet, and we need to do that same little treatment. We'll remove the outside edges on all 4 sides so that they'll line up with that hash mark. That one's a little off. Okay, just rotate each time until you're happy. And basically, I'd like to do it so that the mark itself is gone. Let's see how I am over here. Nice. I line up so that it says 12 on the left. And then just keep that little shaving. Oh, look at that. So impressive. It's a great trimmer. To begin, we are going to place this in the trimmer so that it says Celebrating You Today in the upper right corner. And we'll cut at 8 3/4, 5 1/2. Now rotate so that it's horizontal. And we will trim at 10, 8, 6, and 4. All nice even numbers. This piece we'll place in pocket B. All 4 of those will be used there. This has 4 elements on it, and they'll all be used in pocket B. And that's optional. You don't like to fussy cut something, you don't have to do that, of course. And then these 4 strips the same, also pocket B, Bravo. Then we have these 2 strips that are the same size. We'll just stack those regular and trim them at the same time at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. All 4 pieces, pocket C, the ones that are the same, C, Charlie. And then the other 2 that are smaller, also C, Charlie. And my friends, that's the end of the trimming process. Now I'm going to grab my score pal and my favorite scoring tool. Okay, let's gather up now. All of those pieces be set aside to be scored, and I'm going to approach them in the same way they landed. Okay, so what's on top of your pile, my pile, and your pile should be the same if you haven't been moving things around. And we have this giant 6 1/4 by 12 here. Let's score this at 4 1/2. And then I'm going to flip that paper bottom to top, just like that. So here, and that goes like this. And then I'll score at 9 and 11.5. Weird, right? Let's do that again. So make sure that you have the 12-inch piece. First number, 4.5. Flip the paper bottom to top. And we'll score again at 9 and 11.5. Now, just one quick point, I forgot to mention this before I started scoring. I like to use a metal tip stylus. It has a round ball on the end with the score pal. I prefer to use this over this. And I do carry these in a set at clubscrap.com. Use the largest ball that comes in the set. Okay, then 4.5 again on this next largest one. Flip bottom to top. And next up, we've got 9 and 11.5. Set it aside. Take the next one, 4.5. Flip, this is the last one. Score at 9 and 11.5. And this little trick we did right here is going to help us form a pocket, an angled pocket on the front of our card. And we'll just deal with that in a minute. Next up we have, it should be a 4.25 by 11 size sheet. Let's score that in half at 5.5. This is going to make a vertical card, 5.5, which is half of 10, and then dig for the other two that match, 5.5 and 5.5. So these 4 cards that measure 4.25 by 11, those can be placed in pocket A. We'll get to those in just a minute because we're almost ready. And then we have these other ones. They measure 7 by 10, simple right down the middle. Make sure you're horizontal. It says 10 here. We'll score at 5. And also of note, I am scoring this while the paper has its texture side facing up. Then again, 5. On the rows, we'll go texture facing up while we score at 5. And then wine, score at 5. All of that will go in pocket C Charlie. Now we have a little bit more work to do on these cards, and I think I'm going to do this up front so we don't have to worry about it later. I'm going to swap out my score pal for a cutting mat. All right, I have this sheet of the rose paper here, and I have it positioned so that this little 1/2-inch score line is on my right here. And I'm going to grab my ruler, and I want to measure 3 inches up from the bottom edge of this card, right at that point. Now it's funny because I'm using a grid cutting mat, and it's 1, 2, 3 inches. The cutting mat itself can help me find that measurement, but if I just verify with my ruler, that's 3 inches. So no matter what you're using, you know, you can, I was kind of figured out with these cutting mats. Now, there's this 1/2-inch fold here, and actually this part's gonna go away. And then from the top edge, you can either mark an inch and use scissors to cut from the top edge of this second score line, or just simply use your craft knife. Go down 1 inch from that edge, and I'm kind of removing the score line itself. And then you can cut from that 1 inch down to the 3-inch edge at an angle. And that gives us exactly what we see in the instruction document. It's just an angled piece. Now I'm going to quick show you what this does. So I'm going to fold here by burying the bump of that score line, and you can burnish that as well. Then I'm going to fold, this is a raised bump here. I'm going to fold in on that. And then this is an indentation. So flip it over so I can see the bump, fold in on that. That's why we did that flip during the scoring process. And that gives me this cute little angled pocket for my card. Isn't that fun and easy? Now, I showed you how to do this with a craft knife and cutting mat, and I know some of you might not feel comfortable with that, so I want to show you an alternative way. Again, I'll grab this next sheet, and I have this bump side up here on the rose. So once again, I need to figure out where my 3-inch, 1, 2, 3-inch mark here, and my 1 inch down from this score line here. So what I'll do is use my pencil this time to connect those lines. Next, I'll take scissors, and I'm going to go in from this score line and stop when I reach my mark, my 1 inch mark. Then all I have to do is follow along with my pencil line and my scissors to get that angle going. and boom, I'm there. Let's double check. Here we have the bump of the score, and then fold again on this, and then I'll flip over to find my score line here, and I have a nice cute little pocket on the card. Beautiful. Okay, now we don't have to do all of that stuff here. We'll just quick finish this last one. I'm going to use my craft knife and my, well, 1, 2, 3, and then this is my 1. So I just cut down from the top edge to the 1, go to my mark at an angle, and take it out. Repeat for the final card. I like to have that bump facing up. I'll mark my 3. 1, 2, 3. There it is. Cut down from the top edge to my 1. And then angle to my mark from where I stopped with my cut here. This is such heavy paper. Make sure you're all the way through. Okay, beautiful. Now I have all of my set B cards ready to go. I'll take these and put them in pocket B, and we're ready to do our final card assembly. Let's always begin by removing everything from the designated pockets. So we'll start it with pocket A. And I also like to turn to page 2 in my instructions, find set A cards, and then you can see the cards and then the sentiments that are on the inside of each one and what they look like as just a general guide. Of course, everything is optional as far as what pieces you use, what color combinations you use. And I do like to just organize myself so that the pieces that I'm going to be distributing are together with their like sizes. And you're going to find some larger panels and some smaller panels and your card bases. Now, as I explained a little bit ago, the bump of the score line goes on the inside of the fold. I like to remind people of that every time I teach a class, because there are a whole host of longtime card makers who put the bump on the outside, and that is not the correct way. So I just want to remind you, bump goes on the inside. The score line prepares the way for that paper to fold onto itself. I'll distribute my card bases. So we'll go rose and light green, dark green, and wine. And again, this doesn't really matter. I'm just following what I did in my instruction sheets so that there's some consistency there. And then I will add my printed panels. And now we are going to add the larger of the two. You'll see that there are 2 sets of nesting panels. Grab the larger ones. We'll go light green on this rose, wine down here, rose here, and dark green here. Now, of course, we need to sift in more color. So let's add the wine here, the dark green, the light green, and the rose. So you can see the colors just distributing beautifully, each one represented on the card. Now let's incorporate that 4th color. Notice you have 2 sets of strips. I want you to find, if you compare, one is wider than the other. Grab the widest one, and we'll add the missing color. So this will get green. This will have wine here on the right. This will have the rose, and this will have the light green. Now all the colors are represented. Then we have, I have no words. Both the top and bottom, I have no words. And then may all your soons turn into finally, and healing thoughts and good wishes are being sent your way. Next up, we'll distribute these narrow pieces. These will go on the inside of the card. So dark green here, wine, rose here, and light green. And finally, we'll have our inner sentiments. So I have no words. That's going to be just hugs, thinking of you on both of those. Then we'll have congratulations and thinking of you. All 4 of these cards are assembled exactly the same way. So you don't have to do all of this with me one by one. We're not going to take the time to do that. What we will do is grab your envelopes, okay? You have a set of envelopes. I want you to find the smallest envelope and of the 3 sizes. And I'm going to take all of cards 2, 3, and 4 and load them into the envelope. set them aside, and we'll keep this one card out. This is the one I'm going to assemble with you. All the rest are assembled in the same exact way. Let's see. I think we'll begin by adding the sentiment and the strip to the card panel. So that's the smallest of the panels. If you take the sentiment, and I'm going to match the margin top, left, and bottom. And then I'm going to take that wider piece. Look at what it does. It like finishes it, right? So I'll just take my favorite ATG adhesive and place it on the right. And then in your kit, you also have these gold laser cuts. I'm going to go back and maybe add one to each of these envelopes so that I remember that they get one of those gold laser cuts. And just there's a perforation, so fold on the perforation. And before we add this, I remembered I want to nest this first. So I'm going to add this panel to the next largest panel, the light green. Then I'm going to wrap this around the panel and center it from top to bottom. So to do that, I'll add a little adhesive on each side of this little wrappy thing. I'm going to find the center from top to bottom and just press it down into place. Next, I'll grab this beautiful ribbon and stretch it just past the edges of the panel on each end and trim with my fabric scissors. I'm going to grab some tape, and I'm going to my goal is to just go right kind of along the edge of where that lasering ends. If you can see that, flip it around and secure the ends at the back. Next, I'm going to take a small amount of the ribbon. Well, I'll just take the ribbon end here, the whole entire thing, slide it under the ribbon, and going to tie a small piece of this ribbon to the existing ribbon. And I'll trim the tails to look pretty at an angle. Oh, that's so lovely. Yum, 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 yum. Okay, now this piece, you can add adhesive and nest it right onto this panel. If you want, I like to show this, you can use your grid ruler to figure out like how far away is this panel, and it's going to be 1/4 of an inch. So the first solid line on the grid, both from the top, bottom, and left edge, adds it to the panel centered and level perfectly. Then I will add adhesive to the back of this. Make sure your card is going to open from the bottom to the top here. And center. It's only 1/8 of an inch reveal, so I can eyeball that pretty easily. Next, we have this remaining strip. Now this would have been a scrap, but I thought, it's the exact width of the card. Why not use it? So I'll use my ruler here to help me level this strip onto the card. And then I'll add, it's just an anchoring thing. I mean, it's nothing huge, but you know, it gives me a little something on the inside. You could round the corners on this, that would look lovely. And there's your finished card, easy peasy. Now you may not have enough ribbon to do all of the cards like that, so let me show you the others. Here we have the Healing Thoughts, Thinking of You. Oh, look, I rounded the corners. Here's another one with I Have No Words, the same, rounded corners. I do like that. This is the one we made together. And the final card is where I use the raffia. I think I ran out of this ribbon. So you got plenty of raffia, and I did open it up a little bit. It's a little bit laborious to open this up, but if you can just get it started and unravel it a little bit, I think it's worth doing it with the length, or at the very least, maybe just with the bow section of this. Just, you'll find a seam on here when this is all rolled, and just open it up. And once you get it started, you know, it's fun. It's gonna look great. So wrap that around and then tie onto it, just like I showed you with the previous cards. Let's move on to set B. We will begin, of course, by emptying pocket B. Surprise, surprise. Get everything out of there. I think I got it all. And then what a mess we have on our hands, right? We have these funky little cards with the pockets going on. We got a bunch of strips, prints, all the things. Just go ahead and organize them into piles with matching sizes. If you also want to take a moment and just do a rough cut on the cut apart piece and separate. You see a little halo around all these images, and I just chose to use these on the inside of these cards so that you have them separated into 4 pieces. You don't have to use those, again, like it's all optional. Okay, maybe we'll just take a moment here and fold on these raised score lines to make our pockets, and then do that reverse fold to make the card base itself on those last 2 cards to get that done. So we have room for everything here. Get all that prep work done ahead of time. It really streamlines your card making. Now I'll turn to page 3 of my instructions so I can see all my card samples, and that's the template that I'll follow. We'll begin with our dark green card base, and then our rose, the light green, and the wine color. Next, every one of these card bases will receive a printed panel of the large size. And then this printed panel is going to give us paneling for the pocket. So I'll add one of these to each. These next longer plain pieces are actually the tag. So I'll put a wine color here, a dark green on this one, the rose on this one, and the light green here. And then we'll have our sentiment for a tag as well. You are limited edition. That'll be these first 2. And then wrinkles only go where smiles have been will be the second 2. We'll add our inner sentiments, and they are different sizes. It would just had to do with the map of the paper and the inner sentiment size. Doesn't really matter. We'll go with congratulations on this first one. Happy birthday on the final 3. It doesn't really matter which ones. Then if you want to add this cute little sprig to each one, we have this narrow strip. We'll go rose, light green, wine, and dark green. Then we have the smaller strip, and these are all rescued pieces. Totally optional, but I like what they do for the card. I'll go wine, dark green, rose, and light green. Each of these cards will also have one of these beautiful gold sprig charms. And I want you to grab the ivory medium-size envelopes, the smallest ones that are remaining, and I will take this card and all of its stuff and just slide it into the envelope the short way so that's easy to get in. And that keeps all the pieces organized so that when you're ready to finish the card assembly, which is exactly the same for all 4 cards, you'll have everything you need right there, except the ribbon. You'll have to add that too. I'm gonna grab my cutting mat. Now let's start by getting this taken care of right away. I need to trim away this paper at an angle so it matches the size of the pocket. So basically just temporarily place this 2x6 inch strip onto the pocket that we've already got the angle prepared, right? Hold it there while you turn it over and just draw a line along that angle. That's not where we're going to be cutting though, because if we cut there, it would be the same height as the angled pocket, and we want a nice mat for that. Our ruler helps us prepare the way. So this needs to go plus 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to take my ruler. 1/8 of an inch on my ruler is the very, very first dashed line on the ruler. Boom. So this needs to go too. I can do this one of 2 ways. I can just take scissors and just cut along the line, or I can simply use my craft knife. And to me, I think that makes a little bit of a nicer cut. And when I place this now over my pocket, it's a beautiful fit. I will, while I'm at it, as long as I have it here, I'll just take my favorite adhesive. You could use your bookbinding glue so you get a nice secure angle adhesion as well, but I'll just use my ATG, and that is going to give us a nice perfect fit. I prefer to do it that way rather than just measuring it, because it just could be a little bit wonky depending on the angle that you used. I just like to take my directive from that original angle. Sometimes the angles, like geometry, can be really tricky when it comes to making panels for cards. Before I add this larger panel to the front of the card, I'm going to add this little strip of paper about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch from the edge. So 3/8 would be 3 cubes from the edge. Okay, and you can use your bookbinding glue, or you could use your favorite dry adhesive. Mine, this dry is good for this job here. I'm going 3 cubes in. That keeps it level. If you want, you can eyeball it. That's fine too. And then I'm going to reach for that raffia that I started to unravel and make sure I have a piece long enough to wrap its way around, and I think I do. Good enough. I can maybe unravel it a little from this end here. I like that wrinkled look that it has, but you kind of want it tucked in a little bit so that you can still see the paper underneath. And just kind of like I did before when I was making that other card, I'm gonna stretch it around. I might even fold it in half so I can still see more of that paper. Bring it to the back, and I have my tape always handy from a desktop dispenser so that I can keep one hand on my project while I dispense the tape with the other. Oh, that looks really good. Okay, let's take this piece now and add it to our card base while the flap is still sticking out here. Now we have this little tab, so the purpose of that is to give us something to which we can adhere. And I want to make a form the bottom of my pocket as well, so I'm going to add some adhesive to the bottom of this. There's no flap, but that's okay. And then I'll just close this and push a little bit at the bottom. There's also this lovely embellishment, and I'm going to add that right about here. Perhaps I'll do it now because I want to show you how I added the adhesive. So just our bookbinding glue, get every one of those edges, the most raised area of the piece. And generally I do this last because I want to put something heavy on it so that it just sits. You could also use a brad to attach it. There's even a hole for that, but I didn't. Kind of goes over the raffia and onto the print itself. So pretty. I love that. And what I love about it too, it's very flat, very mail friendly, like as a mailbox friendly. For the tag itself, I'm going to be using a corner rounder punch. This is the corner chomper. You could use a traditional corner rounder. I'm going to go ahead and use the 1/4 inch radius on this. I could use the 1/2 inch too. I mean, it's personal preference. In this situation, I kind of liked the 1/4 inch. To make it a clever little tag, I used my slot punch on the white portion only, or the ivory, whatever you want to call it, on this portion. And then I went in with this lovely green satin, double-faced satin, trim off a piece of that, and I'm going to thread it through the slot that I made with the punch. You could do that with a craft knife and cutting mat as well if you don't have the slot punch. Don't worry. Don't have too much of a topper here because we don't want it to extend past the edge of the card. So now I have a little pull tab for the tag, and it's very, very pretty. And there's no lumps involved, nothing to get away in the way again from a mailing machine, and center it right onto the nestable, and that's going to go right down into the pocket. So sweet. Open up the card, and you can do some fun things with corner rounding here. You can mimic that. You could just do the bottom edges if you wanted to and leave the top squared. I'll try that for this one. So I'm adding this cute little bit of color to it. Then I'll add my sentiment. Center that kind of. Now, if you want, you can add this as well. And I have Jacqueline add that little glow so that you're not trapped into having to do all of that really detailed cut. And it kind of gives it more of a sticker effect, which I like. It makes trimming easy, and it also looks like you planned it that way, right? That only took like a second. And I'll use my favorite bookbinding glue here to just add this near the bottom of the card. That is so lovely. You are a limited edition with unlimited potential. That can be added to your envelope, and it's ready to drop in the mail. Finish up the other 3, and let's do set C. As per usual, we'll begin by emptying the pocket. And I apologize, there's a lot of little pieces in there. Whew, okay, let's get organized. Just take a moment and sort out your pieces. Even for the little squares, I even recommend having it sorted by color. You'll have some narrow strips. You'll have 2 little pieces of extra art. You'll have all those prints. Those can go in their own pile. And then again, just make a pile and sort out all of the squares and miscellaneous pieces by color. With those pieces sorted, I'll take my card bases. Once again, find the bump of the score line, bury it inside the fold, and fold those big 5x7 card bases in half. And I always like to burnish those folds with my bone folder so that they have a nice clean crease. It does not take very long to do that. And sometimes I'll even fold them all just with my finger. And then I stack them together and burnish them all at the same time. First card will be the green, then rose. We'll put the wine here and then the light green below. Maybe we'll do our sentiments next. So we've got, some people are so much sunshine in every square inch. So clever for what we're doing for this card. And we'll do the same thing in this one here next to it. You are not getting older, and then the best time to celebrate is whenever you can. Maybe now we'll add our inner sentiments as well. I appreciate you for the first one. And we'll just throw that in there. Wishing you all that you are wishing for on your birthday. This one, you're not getting older, you're increasing in value. And then this one, celebrating you today. Each one of these cards too on the inside is going to receive a strip. We'll just put the rose here, the dark green on this one, the light green here, and the wine here. This rose card, I used the extra piece of art, and the same on the light green. I'll just tuck those inside because the last thing I want to do is distribute our little squares. For this first card, I'm going to take the wine squares and go one in the upper left, one in the middle, and one down below. Then I'll take the dark green and I'll go one in the upper left, one in the middle, one down below. I'll take the light green, one in the left, one in the middle, one down below, and then the rose, one in the upper left, one in the middle, lower right. Let's go finish this one out. We'll go with the light green, middle, right, and left. And then we'll take the rose, right, left, and middle. Easy peasy. For this one, we'll go with the wine, middle, right, left, and then the missing color is the light green, right? Light green, all those missing spots. Let's use the rose here, rose, rose, rose. Missing color is green, 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 green. We'll go wine, 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 and then green, green, green. Look at that. We have one of each square left. You could put that on the inside of the card if you wanted to, but that's how it ended. Not bad. I could have just skipped trimming it, but whatever. That would have made it weird. Okay, now we have all these prints, and we don't have an equal amount for each card. I'm going to start it with one middle, just one kind of like this. Left, right, middle, bottom, left, right, middle, bottom. And I've got two left. I'll just add to a random card. And basically, that's it. Those are all of the pieces required. Now, I know I'm going to make a huge mess. Pop these in. Oh, maybe you want to assemble all these when you have them arranged. Just don't dump them into the envelope right now if you don't want to do that. Otherwise, it's not that hard to get them all reorganized. So, first thing I'm going to do with this one is just flip up the printed squares, and I'll add my adhesive here. So that was the top left, the top right, the middle, and the bottom two corners. Next thing you can do if you want, again, everything is optional. I'm going to snip off a piece of ribbon and just check the grain direction, make sure it dips so it's wrapping its way around. And I'm gonna wrap this cute little square. You could do a little twist, you could do whatever you want, just to add a little element to the card. And next, if you want to use your grid ruler, like if you're gonna start at the top, take these 3 squares, add your adhesive, and the margin is just gonna be 1 cube. So if I just rest my ruler here so I can sort of see that line, there's no up or down for these squares, which is nice. Look at that, it's a beautiful fit. Next I can add my sentiment, and that's going to be an 1/8 of an inch away. Maybe I'll do it this way. Just 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the square and from the edge of the card. My ruler helps me with every square inch. Then I'll do these 2 on the left. So, you know, this isn't all that hard, but I think the resulting look of the card is so lovely. And it's just a little bit of a project to get everything adhered, but not too bad. Now, using your ruler even for these last ones is sort of optional because you sort of have a template kind of in place. You can eyeball if you want. You know, I'm not really much of an eyeballer because I always walk back and think, oh, it's not quite the way I wanted it to be. That's why we had to make that weird cut to this cut apart here, is so that it could have that spacing correct. You had to drop an 1/8 of an inch somewhere, and I thought it'd be easiest to drop it from this piece rather than all the other pieces. So there was a fair amount of thought that went into that process when I was designing the card set this month. I'm gonna add some glue to this, and I'll use my grid ruler. I'm gonna go 3 cubes from the edge, and perhaps just maybe round 2 of those corners just for something a little different. Very nice. The final little embellishment is this sweet leaf. And when I added it, I just did with my book binding glue. You could use the dry adhesive as well. It should work perfectly with this. And I think I'm gonna add him, so he's just watching for tangents here, kind of going onto the sentiment, a little bit anchored by the ribbon, and maybe put a little heavy weight on there so that it bonds well with the paper. And then you're finished with card set C. Yay! Very good work. Hope you like these card structures and the way mathematically everything fell into place. I received a really nice handmade card from one of our card club members just maybe a few weeks ago, and he wrote this beautiful letter about how much he likes the system of this card making, and he just discovered us, and like it's opened up this whole new world. And what was cool about it is that he had recycled one of the formulas that I created for one set, and he just grabbed his own paper and made the formulas again. He's like, I'm sure you noticed that I recycled this formula, and the funny part is I hadn't even noticed until he pointed it out. So you can make another dozen completely fresh cards by recycling the papers, you know, sub 1 for 1, and then follow those same exact instructions. That's the beauty and value of all this mental work I've put into creating these formulas for you. My goal is to help you utilize your paper stash, because I know that a lot of you have one and it's starting to be stressful for you to have it. So I'm here to help you remedy your overcrowding paper situation by providing you with these helpful formulas that make great use of your paper and also inspire you so that you can save all your creative energy for the embellishing and decorating and stamping. You don't have to think about what kind of a card you're going to make. What will the structure be? All right, enough said. Thank you for joining me for this workshop. If you haven't already, hit subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will never miss another workshop, plus all the other fun things that we do on our channel. And if you're not already a member of Club Scrap, I want to extend an invitation for you to join us. Now, of course, whether you're a member or not, you are welcome to shop, but if you are a member, you save $8 on your card kits and page kits. It can't be beat. It's an amazing value. Come and join us here at Club Scrap, and I look forward to our next workshop together. Till then, keep crafting.